Welcome. This video is documenting the prediction that the US stock market index will peak and begin its biggest crash in all of history on August 12th, 2026. The stock market as a whole will peak, or rather I should say the three main stock indexes, the Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ indexes, will make their all-time peak highs on August 12th and then commence their biggest crashes in all of history. As well, this video is predicting that on August 18th, 6 days later, one or more of these three indexes will lose a total of 13% in one day. Okay. These are, of course, very precise predictions. The predictions in themselves are sufficient to conclude that I must have a supernatural origin to how these predictions are known. This video will explain some of the reasons for how these predictions are known. And as you will clearly see, these reasons cannot or could not have been concocted in the imagination of a human being. No one is creative enough to think up these reasons that I'll be explaining. And the reasons that support, or rather are clearly from God, will also prove that these predictions are from God. That said, the predictions are precise enough so that they actually do not require these reasons. And I would therefore have the authority to just simply tell you the origin of the knowledge for how these predictions are known, and that would be enough. But not only are these predictions for the purpose of proving that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God, and that all other worldviews and religions are not, quote-unquote, different paths up the same mountain, etc. All authentic expressions of the truth. No. Biblical Christianity is, of course, an extremely exclusive worldview, and it cannot be true in addition to other worldviews. The world is either round or it is flat. It cannot be both. Doesn't matter if someone has the opinion and it's true for them that the world is flat. It either is flat or it isn't. As such, either God, the nature of God, is monotheistic or pantheistic. In other words, either God is a personal being and holy, which is the Hebrew word that means separate from his creation, and is the creator of the creation, or he is an impersonal energy, if you could even call him a he, an it, if you will. It is an impersonal energy that is the universe itself and is the creation itself. That's called pantheism, and both monotheism and pantheism cannot both be true. And this also applies, of course, within the monotheistic traditions. They can all not be true. They are all exclusive. They fundamentally conflict. And what I am here to tell you is that this prediction will prove the matter. And I know far, far, far more than you or anyone how this prediction is known and the purpose for this prediction, or these predictions. if you are a New Ager or New Spirituality or Consciousness Revolution or Collective Consciousness or a yoga, meditator, etc., that kind of Eastern thinking that is the dominant worldview in the West today, know this: you are not correct in concluding that I knew these predictions ahead of time through somehow tapping into the collective consciousness, etc. Wrong. Likewise, if you are a Muslim or a quote-unquote Christian and you would like to conclude that the reasons for knowing these predictions ahead of time is that I was in contact with a demon, no, you are not correct either. And also be warned, the unforgivable sin is the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit. And more than this, though, more than for the sake of proving the righteous Christian God of the Bible, these predictions are also for the purpose of proving the controversial things that I'll be saying in this video. And make no mistake, I know more than you the reason and purpose for these predictions and why God has given me a voice through these predictions. And it is to prove once and for all these controversial things. Not just in this video, but in all of the videos on this channel. And on that note, the wise person will recognize that when these predictions come to pass, they need to watch every minute of every video on this channel. That said, let's get into these reasons for, or some of the reasons for how these predictions are known that I'll be explaining in this video. Before I begin, actually, I'll make it just to be clear once again. If you are a quote-unquote Christian even, no, the reason for these predictions is not for you to go, oh, cool, neat, amazing. You were able to know that these things would happen ahead of time. That is not the purpose for these predictions. Like I said, the purpose for the predictions is to prove the controversial things that I'll be saying, and I know more than you the purpose for the predictions. And to not appreciate this is to miss entirely the purpose and point for these predictions. In my opinion, you are wasting your time. You might as well turn off the video now. So, let's begin here with this amazing thing, which was this prophetic sign in 2004, the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, December 26th, the day of the Indian Ocean tsunami. By the way, these paragraphs, these written sentences are point form. They're just abbreviated notation, really, that I used to communicate to some friends. And I'll be explaining and elaborating on what's been written in these paragraphs. So, okay. So, the Indian Ocean tsunami occurred on this date here. And of course, this is an ocean sign and there were ships. That's relevant because there's an important passage in the book of Revelation regarding ships, which I speak about a lot in recent videos because it's very important. And long story short, the destruction of a third of a ships that's described is symbolic of the destruction of America. But I won't explain it again, why that is the case, because I've just explained it too many other times. And of course, when the predictions come to pass, I'm sure you will know that you need to watch all of the videos. So, anyway, there were, as reported by the media, 220,000 deaths from the Indian Ocean tsunami. That date was exactly 60 plus 60 plus 60 months before December 26th, 2019. That gives us 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Okay, now this eclipse, and by the way, the Antichrist, the 44th president, grew up in Indonesia for 4 years. And if you hadn't noticed, I just said something that was controversial. And what, pop quiz, what did I say at the beginning of this video? I said that the purpose for this prediction is to prove the controversial things that I'll be saying. In other words, there is no debate. Zero. Absolutely nada. Once this prediction comes to pass. So if you are, for example, an evangelical that loves to play the Antichrist guessing game, well, now you know, first of all, that the whole game was false to begin with. It was deception from Satan, and I explained it too many other times, but it's actually rooted in your false soteriology, your false salvation doctrine. But I'll explain that to you in another video. So anyway, it's time to stop playing the Antichrist guessing game. And that's the purpose of the prediction. Make no mistake. And anyway, this Antichrist grew up for 4 years, the 44th president in Indonesia, which is where the Indian Ocean tsunami emanated from. Anyway, this eclipse that was 60 plus 60 plus 60 months exactly after the Indian Ocean tsunami traversed over the Indian Ocean in a path parallel with the waves from the Indian Ocean tsunami. In fact, it came into the Indian Ocean tsunami from Northeast Africa, Yemen, for example, Saudi Arabia, etc., that peninsula, that's the Middle East, and that's where the Indian Ocean tsunami actually hit. But anyway, it went across this path of totality of this eclipse I'm talking about, went across the Indian Ocean and went over Indonesia. Now, this eclipse was known for a viral image. I mean, the big news of the day regarding this eclipse, anyway, well, it was the top story on the Drudge Report page, by the way, and it was an image of what I'm talking about. The viral image from the ship of the eclipse, which was the sun setting during the eclipse over the Indian Ocean, which engendered what was called Devil's Horns. It was the Devil's Horns eclipse. The Antichrist is the representative of the devil, and this eclipse was exactly 60 plus 60 plus 60 months after the Indian Ocean tsunami. And again, like I'm describing, the eclipse pointed to the Indian Ocean tsunami. And that's why from the ship, the image was taken over the Indian Ocean that produced this Devil's Horns image. Maybe I should stop the video here. It's just for fun. I'm going to stop the video and show you an image of that, of what I'm talking about. Now, this eclipse had a maximum peak, which is the longest duration of the eclipse. Every eclipse has a maximum, and the duration of the maximum of this particular eclipse was exactly 220 seconds. That's a stunning confirmation that this, in fact, is pointing to the Indian Ocean tsunami that killed 220,000 people. Now, 220 seconds is also 3 minutes and 40 seconds, and that hints at for 3 transgressions and for 4, which is an idiom in the book of Amos in the Old Testament regarding judgment. It's an idiom that means the limit of judgment, transgressions has been reached. 3, and then the 4 is the overflow and the judgment. So where it peaked is amazing, because it peaked right off the coast of Sumatra, the island, and that's where the earthquake emanated from. The earthquake was just off the coast of Sumatra. Now, on the same day as this eclipse was the big news story of the crash of the Safari Tours helicopter in Hawaii. This is a prophetic sign on the day of the Devil's Horns eclipse, 60 plus 60 plus 60 months after the tsunami, because the Antichrist is from Hawaii, but was born in a location known for its safari tours. That's right. He was born in the Serengeti in southwest Kenya. And the purpose of this prediction is to prove the matter. There's no debate. Zero. Absolutely none. Do you understand? It's not a conspiracy theory. If you thought it was, it isn't anymore. You were just fooled. Okay? Many people already know this. Many people. Like almost half of the nation. But if you are on the left, you don't know this because you were fooled. Just like you were fooled about the true nature of Barack Obama, the Antichrist. Just like you were fooled about basically everything that you believe. I'm sorry. I'm trying to help you. But every single thing that the left believes today is essentially wrong and a lie. Like everything. Including the idea that you are morally superior than conservatives. Or you are more enlightened. No, it's the opposite. I don't even want to be politically correct and say, no, it is the opposite. I mean, and it's not to be arrogant, but the truth comes from the Bible, and our politics are downstream from the flow that emanates from our worldview. And we are what we believe. And when you have been deceived on your worldview, which is the nature of God and the truth about the Bible and Christ, you ultimately get deceived on basically everything else. And that's the truth about our reality. It's all a matter of seeking and whether or not one wants to know the truth. And the truth is, people on the left don't want to know the truth. Not only about God, but about everything. They love lies. They love them. Like all of the lies of the left, they love. And that's the spiritual truth. Now, hopefully you continue to watch this video and I haven't offended you too much. But like I said, I'm trying to help you. Hopefully you are wise enough to know that the prediction is important, and therefore you should watch the whole video no matter what I have to say. Now, this helicopter, okay, so also, God is using helicopters. Well, one, helicopters are symbolism for dragons with their tails, and the metaphor for the Antichrist in Bible prophecy is a dragon. But also, God is using helicopters and crashes of helicopters, and there's more of than just this one, is for their X-shaped rotor blades. And that's because the letter X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which Bible prophecy says if one takes, they will go to hell. And it was the S-H-O-T, and it still is the S-H-O-T in its current form. For those that think it is a so-called precursor to the mark of the Antichrist, here is another controversial thing that I am saying that is now proven to be true, which is that it was not a supposed precursor. It was and is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or false form of religious worship, or some sort of a supposed new age of new dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is in fact judgment for this particular doctrine, which Jesus said he hates. Yes, dispensationalism is part of the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. So be warned, if you are telling people or think that it is the precursor to the mark of the Antichrist, it's part of your Nicolaitan doctrine that Jesus hates. That said, nowhere in the Bible does it say one cannot repent after having taken the mark of the Antichrist. That's another controversial thing. Yes, I do realize, of course. And it is proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass. Okay, so that's the reason for the X rotor blade here and this crash. Now, this prediction in this video is talking about a crash from a high place. The stock market will crash from a high place, just like this helicopter did. In fact, not only did it crash from a high place, but it crashed on the Napali coast of Kauai, which is famous for its cliffs and drops, steep drops into the ocean, like a steep drop from the stock market, in other words. Which is why it is stunning that I'm about to connect that crash that points to the Antichrist and identifies the Antichrist to this coming prediction for the stock market crash. Because, again, we had the 60 plus 60 plus 60 months connection here to this particular crash of the X rotor blade. Okay, and then from this date, it's 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days to the predicted peak of the stock market. August 12, 2026, which will be the day of a extremely prophetic eclipse. I'm calling it the hantavirus. It could be called, I'm calling it many things. It's the hantavirus ship, because only on this channel will you hear in the other video the parallel between the hantavirus ship, the World Cup, and this eclipse. The hantavirus ship departed Ushuaia and then went to Praia, Cape Verde. The initials UP spell up. The path of the boat went up the map across the globe from the port that is nicknamed the end of the world, as in the World Cup final, but it went to the top of the globe, and then the eclipse path will go from the top of the globe in a downward path across the map over Spain, which is where the ship ended up, the Canary Islands, Spain, and on, as explained in the other video. But we also have a parallel here with the X rotor blade, because as I just said, X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Furthermore, the mark of the Antichrist is described in context of the number 666 in Bible prophecy. And then the Antichrist, mark of the Antichrist, is for the virus. It's the VACCINE. All right. Now we have the 60 plus 60 plus 60 months, then the 6 years, 6 months, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 days connection. And then from that day, we have another 6 days to the predicted collapse in the stock market, when it is predicted that in one day, the stock index will crash the 6th prime number percent, 13%. That's right. And also, the 18th day of the month is 6 plus 6 plus 6. Yeah. This day is 6 plus 6. The 12th day of the month is 6 plus 6. But from the Indian Ocean tsunami, which is symbolic of a crash because the waves crashed onto the shore and it was a disaster, we have 60 plus 60 plus 60 months, followed by 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days, followed by 6 days to the stock market crash. And also the peak. This is absolutely stunning. This is absolutely amazing, this paragraph here. It is something to behold. The hantavirus ship was Dutch. And it ultimately ended up in Holland after all of the passengers departed in Spain. The ship went back to Holland. The end of the trip. Near the top of the globe. Tom Hollands fame, this famous actor, Tom Holland, his fame began with the movie The Impossible. All right? The Impossible is a disaster drama about the Indian Ocean tsunami. That was his debut movie. He received praise for his acting, some award in Britain. And the movie is about the Indian Ocean tsunami. I had always wondered, since realizing the history, the backstory for Tom Holland, I had wondered how Holland could be part of the science. It occurred to me today that it's because of the Dutch hantavirus ship that's Dutch and went back to Holland. Stunning. Not only that, if you know, the big movie release the other day was Tom Holland's movie. Perfectly timed, as I'm just about to explain, for these predictions. Tom Holland, in other words, is in the news right now. He's just released the biggest movie probably of history in terms of revenue globally. And it's, well, wait a second. And that's because of the global movie industry, not because of necessarily any kind of appreciation for the particular movie in America. This is a global movie phenomenon, which is why it'll become probably the biggest movie in history. And that gets us back to the Indian Ocean tsunami that killed people from all over the globe. And the eclipse that went over the globe, etc. And it's another upcoming eclipse. By the way, I didn't finish that off. So the eclipse, if you look at it on the map, the ship goes from the bottom left to the top right, and then it's followed by, on the map, just slightly to the right, a path of the eclipse that goes from the top left to the bottom right, just like a stock chart would. Which is why we know that the peak of the stock market will be August 12th, the day of the eclipse. Okay. But back to Tom Holland here and the movie Impossible about the Indian Ocean tsunami. The Impossible cost $45 million. That's amazing because it's very important in God's signs that the Apocalypse Now movie cost $45 million. And I'm not going to explain that right now because it's explained in other videos. It's a very important thing, the use of Apocalypse Now. But the big story about Apocalypse Now was its budget. I mean, at the time, it was the big news story. And also, by the way, speaking of disasters, the reason why it cost so much, and it was a big controversy back then, of course, today, that sort of budget's not a big deal. But back then, it was a huge deal. And the reason why it cost so much is because of a hurricane that hit filming on location and destroyed the set in the Philippines. Okay, now, and there was even a documentary made by Coppola's wife called Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. Now, anyway, in God's signs, including and related to the Apocalypse Now sign, it was revealed by God that it's important that the reciprocal of 45 is 0.022. But that's extremely amazing because we're connecting it now to the movie The Impossible. And incidentally, the Philippines is in Southeast Asia, as was the origin of the earthquake in the Indian Ocean tsunami. That's even more of a parallel that brings us the movie The Impossible and its cost of $45 million, a parallel with the cost of Apocalypse Now. Because Apocalypse Now, the word apocalypse is a word that means, well, besides what it means in Greek, it's the same word as the Revelation. The book of Revelation is the book of Apocalypse, the last book in the Bible, the prophetic book that talks about the end times and the disasters. And, like, for example, the destruction of a third of the ships. So this is amazing, this connection between the movie The Impossible and Apocalypse Now. Not only is it the cost, but it's also the geographical locations of the subject matter and the filming for that matter, because of course the movie The Impossible was partly filmed in Thailand. And of course Apocalypse Now is about Vietnam, but was filmed in the Philippines, and so you get the idea, Southeast Asia. Anyway, the reciprocal of 45 is 0.022, which hints at the 220,000 deaths in the Indian Ocean tsunami. The beginning of the apocalypse symbolism here. Now, the impossible, okay, so the movie The Impossible is a Spanish production. That's amazing. The movie is a Spanish production. That's because the hantavirus ship and the World Cup are all about Spain, as I explained in the other videos. But the eclipse that's coming will be largely over Spain. That's the main country that it's going over, and it will end just after going off the coast of Spain. The ship ended its journey in Spain, the Canary Islands. Besides the fact that it went on to Holland, like I just said, the story really is about the end of its journey in Spain because that's where all of the passengers disembarked. Now, the movie that's a Spanish production was partly filmed in Alicante on the coast of Spain, as in like the coast of Indonesia where the earthquake emanated and where people died on the coasts in the Indian Ocean tsunami. Alicante will experience 99.2% of the eclipse on August 12th. Essentially, it's right next to the path of totality of the eclipse. The new Spider-Man movie starring Tom Holland is part of what they call Phase 6 of Marvel Comics universe. That gets us to this pattern of sixes like I've been showing here. It is the fourth Spider-Man movie starring Tom Holland. This is part of the pattern with the hantavirus ship and World Cup signs that pointed to Psalm chapter 46 and the verse, "The nations rage," as I explained in the other videos. I'll just say this, Spain is an anagram for Psalm. The I is resembling the L and the N is resembling an M, and so it's a perfect anagram. That's another subject that is explained again in the other videos. The fourth Tom Holland Spider-Man movie premiered exactly 4 times 4 days before the eclipse, and it was released 4 + 4 + 4 days before the eclipse. The Spider-Man movie, so that's a bunch of 4s, and it was the fourth Tom Holland one, right? That's because of the 44th president. The Spider-Man movie, who grew up for 4 years in Indonesia, the Spider-Man movie that is part of Phase 6 was released 6 + 6 + 6 days before the predicted collapse of the stock market of the 6th prime number percent, 13% in one day. 666. Phase 6, 60 + 60 months, 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days. You get the idea. The Impossible was released exactly the 4 times 4th semi-prime number of months, which is 133 months. This is also 1109%, and that's amazing because God is pairing 110 and 9 together in his signs to point to 9/11. And the fourth plane on 9/11, the fourth hijacked plane, killed 44 people, which confirms the 4 times 4 months exact connection to the release of the movie The Impossible, which was about the Indian Ocean tsunami that killed people from around the world. And on 9/11, it was the World Trade Center that collapsed. I'm just going to play a clip here, just a few minutes, explaining how it is that God pairs 9 and 110. I haven't played the clip in a while, and so I'll be right back. Jesus' official arrival into Jerusalem and first coming was on the 10th day of the first month in the Hebrew calendar. This is 110, and this hints at the number 110. In the book of Joshua, the date on which the Hebrews crossed over the Jordan River and officially entered the Promised Land was also on the 10th day of the first month, which is 110 and hints at the number 110. Jesus' first coming is symbolized by the number 110. This is why on 9/11, the two towers that collapsed were each 110 stories high. The collapse of two towers that were 110 floors was symbolism for Jesus' second coming. In the book of Joshua in the Bible, Joshua died at the age of 110. Joshua led the Hebrews around the security walls of the ancient city of Jericho before they collapsed in judgment. On 9/11, the Twin Towers, which were 110 stories high, collapsed, engendering a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall, where George Washington was inaugurated, on Wall Street. President George Washington was a founding father, and his inauguration as the first president was a symbolic founding of the nation. The cracking of the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street on 9/11 symbolized America's foundation in God being cracked. This is because after Washington's inauguration at Federal Hall, he then walked down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel, where he consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its blessings. After 9/11, Trinity Chapel was called the Miracle Chapel, as it was the only building at Ground Zero to have survived. It did not even suffer a broken window due to the 70-year-old sycamore tree that was uprooted as it sheltered the chapel from the falling debris. In commemoration of this sycamore tree outside the chapel, today there is a huge bronze statue of its roots. In other words, through the 9/11 events, God was pointing to Trinity Chapel and Washington's covenantal consecration of the nation to God at Trinity Chapel. Wall Street is named after the original 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. The collapse of 110 floors that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, which is named after a 9-foot-high security wall, hints at 9/11 and points to Joshua, who died at 110, and the Hebrews that marched around the walls of security before they collapsed in judgment. 110 floors and the 9-foot-high wall of security that was Wall Street points to George Washington's march down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel that symbolized a covenantal relationship between America and God. To this effect, Washington's march down Wall Street with the New York Stock Exchange, the building that symbolizes America's financial strength, located on one side of the street, and Federal Hall, the building that symbolizes America's governmental and institutional strength on the other side, also pointed to the cutting rights ritual practiced in ancient Israel that was used in Abraham's and God's ritual walk in their covenant that is described in Genesis 15. A covenant that symbolizes Washington's walk down Wall Street and his covenantal consecration of the nation to God at Trinity Chapel. There are only two nations in the history of the world that were founded not on ethnicity or territory or language, but were founded solely for God: Israel and America. In every daily Bible that is divided into 365 readings, a portion of the Bible for each day of the year, on every September 11th, everyone that reads this standard 365-day Bible reads the passage in the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, verse 11, which is the judgment warning on ancient Israel, which was a raid on ancient Israel by the world's first recorded terrorists, the ancient Assyrians. And the terrorists on 9/11 were from the same part of the world. The Assyrians raided the northern kingdom of Israel first, and then later the southern kingdom of Judah was destroyed. which is why the terrorists on 9/11 hit the North Tower first, followed 17 minutes later by the South Tower. And this Isaiah 9:11 passage includes a mention of collapsed buildings and uprooted sycamore trees. On the morning after 9/11, Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle gave a speech to the world regarding the events on 9/11. He quoted the passage in Isaiah 9:11, not realizing it was a judgment warning on the ancient Jews. He quoted how, after the raid by the Assyrians, the Hebrews did not repent to God, but instead vowed defiantly to rebuild and become stronger than before. And so, like the ancient Jews, America did not repent after the judgment warning, and instead defied God even more. And so, like ancient Israel, America will now be destroyed. This is why, in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, he frequently pairs together the number 110 and the number 9. Both of these numbers symbolize God's judgment on the nation, and paired together, these numbers point to the big judgment warning that was 9/11. As well, these numbers paired together in God's signs and connections serve as a witness confirmation that the perceived signs and connections are from God. After the judgment warning of 9/11, America was given a period of grace to repent and turn back to God, or else judgment destruction. In the Bible, a 20-year period symbolizes a complete period of waiting. Jacob waited 20 years to get possession of his wives and property. The children of Israel waited 20 years to be freed of Jabin, the king of Canaan, when they were freed from bondage by Deborah and Barak. The Ark of the Covenant waited 20 years in Kiriath-Jearim, and Solomon spent 20 years building his home and the house of God. On the 20th anniversary of the buildings that collapsed on 9/11 was the sudden collapse of America's presence in Afghanistan, and the iconic scene of this was the U.S. Air Force plane leaving the airport in Afghanistan, and the big number on the side of its plane is 1109, which hints at 110 and 9. So, there's another prophetic sign involving Tom Holland. He fell and injured his head. All right, well, while filming the movie Spider-Man. Okay, now the plot of the movie Spider-Man, this one that he was filming, when he fell and injured his head on the set, and because of that, had to take a break from filming because of the concussion he received. Well, this is very relevant because the plot of this movie involves RNA and suppressing powers, which hints at the coming demonic possession, demonic power of people who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, which will deposit and has deposited things inside people that migrate to the brain and self-assemble, act like transistors for frequencies, which then are triggered and engender delta brainwaves, which facilitate demonic possession. Long story short. So, that's why it's amazing that he injured his head, as in the brain, while filming Spider-Man, which is about a movie about taking something. In the movie, he willingly takes something, which suppresses his powers, apparently. But this is symbolic of taking willingly the mark of the Antichrist, which alters a person's DNA, which is what makes it a mark. Okay, and an abomination. So, that's amazing. Now you know the backstory for why this is a prophetic sign when he fell and injured his head on September 19th last year, which was exactly 4 + 6 months before the World Cup final that pointed to Psalm 46, as I explained in the other videos. And that World Cup that pointed to Psalm 46, was a parallel with the hantavirus ship, as I also explained. which brings us back to Tom Holland, because the hantavirus ship returned to Holland, etc. Now, and also the ship is all about its path, as was the Tom Holland movie, The Impossible, the path of the Indian Ocean tsunami, etc. Now, the day that Tom Holland fell and injured his head was 4 + 4 + 4 days after the 44th president won an Emmy Award for his narration of the episode Indian Ocean in the Netflix docuseries Our Oceans, which was the same day as the blood moon lunar eclipse that was centered over the Indian Ocean. That's right. The Antichrist won an award for Indian Ocean on the same day that a blood moon lunar eclipse centered over the Indian Ocean, September 7th, 2025. And this is the really astounding thing. That day was exactly, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the number 2520 is from the most central prophecy in the Bible, symbolic of the period of the end times and the Antichrist. This day on which the Indian Ocean was centered underneath the blood moon lunar eclipse, and the day that the Antichrist won the Emmy Award for Indian Ocean, that day was exactly 2,520 plus 2,520 plus 2,520 days after the Indian Ocean tsunami. Exactly. On December 26, 2004. This is so amazing. And now I'm showing how it all connects to the present. Because again, the World Cup final I just connected, and now to the day that Tom Holland fell. Oh no, sorry. I haven't connected that yet. Yes, I did. 4 + 6 months, right? And then the Tom Holland fall was 4 + 4 days after the Indian Ocean and the blood moon eclipse, which was then this 3 times 225, 20 days after the Indian Ocean tsunami. Of course, the Indian Ocean tsunami is a big sign that indicated the coming of the end and judgment on the world. And again, 2520 days, I should say, like this is 2520 days. 2520 days in the prophecy is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist and the end times. So, and it connects to Obama, the Antichrist, who is from Indonesia, where the Indian Ocean tsunami emanated from. And coincidentally, because it's not a coincidence, it's all from God, he narrated the Indian Ocean episode, okay? Now, September 7th, 2025, the day of the 44th president signed, like I just explained, was 1 year, 3 months, and 3 days, which hints at 133, the 44th semi-prime number, a number that is only divisible by 2 other prime numbers, which God uses, which is also 153 plus 153 plus 153 days, and that's relevant because 153 fish were caught in the net in the boat in Jesus' last miracle, and so this is symbolic of a ship. And this is also the equivalent of 9 times 17 plus 9 times 17 plus 9 times 17. And that's irrelevant, I should say, because the Antichrist was president from 09 until 17. And that gets us to the day it is predicted that U.S. warships will be sunk on the ocean. So the award for the ocean, the Indian Ocean episode, connects to and the Antichrist connects to the day it's predicted that ships will sink on the ocean. You know what? It's the Indian Ocean, technically. I mean, they may be inside the Persian Gulf, but if they're not, even if they are, the Persian Gulf connects to the Indian Ocean. But if they're in the Gulf of Oman, that's the Indian Ocean. Wow. And furthermore, whoa, the eclipse that I talked about on the day of the Safari Tours crash, December 26, 2019, that eclipse it began in the Persian Gulf. Whoa. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. Whoa. Whew. And like I said at the beginning, the prophecy about the destruction of a third of the ships is actually symbolic of the destruction of America. Again, I explained that in other videos. Now, December 26th, 2004, like I said, 2520 plus 2520 plus 2520 days to September 7th, the day of the award for the Indian Ocean by Barack Obama, the 44th president, and the eclipse over, the lunar eclipse centered over the Indian Ocean. That's 4 plus 4 plus 4 days to the day that Tom Holland fell on his head and injured his head. And that's 4 plus 6 months exactly to the World Cup final that pointed to Psalm 46, which is in turn 4 plus 4 plus 4 days to the release date of the Tom Holland movie, Spider-Man, which is the fourth Spider-Man, I should have put that there, which is the fourth Spider-Man starring him, I should say, which is in turn another 4 plus 4 plus 4 days to the predicted peak of the stock market and the eclipse. And then that is in turn exactly 40 plus 40 plus 40 days to the predicted sinking of the U.S. warships. Yeah. Well, 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. The Impossible was released in the year 12. Tom Holland Spider-Man premiered 4 times 4 days before August 12th, the predicted peak of the stock market and the eclipse. Tom Holland Spider-Man released 4 plus 4 plus 4 days, which is 12 days before the peak of the stock market predicted and the eclipse. Okay, so we've covered everything in this video now, or this email. God bless. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.